welcome to Write the World. I'm your host, Lorana Hoops, and you have joined us on TLBTV. The show is brought to you by TLBTV and the Liberty Beacon. And this is the show where, of course, we talk to all sorts of different authors and writers of all sorts of genres, and we give you some great books to read. And my wonderful guest today is Erynn Newman. How are you doing today, Erynn?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing very well. So you told me that you're living in South Carolina and you're just going to miss Hurricane Irma. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. I think it's going to head a little bit west of us, but we are right in the top western corner next to North Carolina and Tennessee. So right in the mountains, which is nice. So we don't usually get a whole lot of hurricane activity, but this one's kind of a monster. So
yeah, so that was a bit scary for a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I don't live in Florida, and I hope all the people in Florida are safe.
Definitely.
Because that was looking a little scary there.
Yeah.
Like a big storm. All right, so let's talk about your books. So you write romantic suspense. So
Yes.
First of all, let's tell the listeners, like, what classifies a book as romantic suspense? What does it have to have?
Let's see. I mean, the romance thread would be the obvious given. And then suspense, I generally see things kind of fall into different categories, whether it's like a military thriller, or in my case, it's spies or CIA, or usually have somebody who's in the armed forces or some sort of government agency, or they're maybe retired, but some sort of mystery action kind of angle where you got some bad guys that are trying to mess up that romance before it can get started usually.
Okay, so that sounds like a nice little thing to have in. I write romance, but not with the suspense.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I'm like, I need to add something a little different, because that's always just, when you open a book, okay, I'm going to meet the hero, I'm going to meet the heroine. Eventually, they're going to fall in love. That's how a romance works.
Right.
And if you don't follow those rules, romance readers get really angry.
Yes, I think that actually is kind of part of an issue that I ran into with mine when I was trying to pitch it to people, is because mine is not the typical boy meets world romance, boy meets girl romance, but is we actually open on their wedding day. And so I have the hero and the heroine. He actually is presumably killed by a car bomb on their wedding day. So you start out with the happily ever after, and then everything is kind of ripped to shreds. And then I introduce a little bit of a love triangle while we follow finding out that her husband is not actually dead, but has been captured. We also have his best friend and CIA partner stepping in to kind of look after his wife. And so we've got a 3-year span, which is a little more than, or a little less than half the book, of the two of them kind of grieving together and starting to become a little more than friends, and then the husband trying so hard to get back, and then the phone call when he escapes, and then we're trying to figure out what's going to happen from there. And so that's really when the more of the suspense angle kicks in, because he escapes, but the arms dealers are still after them, and so we're dealing with trying to beat the big bad towards the end of the book, and also deal with the fallout of the love triangle when the husband returns. So yeah, it's definitely not your typical boy meets girl and they get married at the end thing, but we start with the wedding and then see the fallout of everything that happens after that.
It sounds like it's super interesting, though, but I imagine that you've had some readers who are like, wait, this isn't, my 1, 2, 3 happy ending.
Definitely.
Yeah, kind of thing. And it's strange because, people are always like, oh, it's so redundant. Like, I've read this book before, but then anytime we try to shake it up as authors, then people get really upset because they're like,
Yes.
This doesn't follow the rules. So it's this fine line we have to walk between. Okay, we want to make sure we're following the trope rules, but we also want to have some creative and new ideas.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. I had one reviewer say that she thought that my synopsis gave away too much because I'd tell everyone that the husband is alive. And she was like, yeah, then I felt like I couldn't fully invest in the other side of the love triangle. But the book also tells us that the husband is alive. By chapter 2 or 3, we see what's going on with him at the same time. And so I don't think I gave away too much there, but I couldn't not have us know that, because then we'd spend almost half of the book falling in love with this other couple just for me to destroy it for nobody that you care about. And so I think it's important that we know that her husband is not only alive, but is thinking of her and doing everything he can to get back to her, because otherwise you're going to have, everybody's going to be like, who is this guy and why is he back here ruining everything?
Yeah.
And so the thing that I liked about this is that this man is his best friend. And so everybody in this love triangle, even though I hate love triangles traditionally, but they each care about everybody else more than they even care about themselves. And so that was one of the things that I wanted to see how that would look different if these people like really weren't trying to go after their own selfish interests, but really wanted what was best for everybody else involved.
Interesting. I like that take on it. So give us the title of this book. What's this one called?
Out of Darkness, and I can show it to you.
Oh, I love your cover.
Thank you.
That's beautiful.
Thanks.
Okay, so now you told me is the prequel part of this book, Out of Darkness?
Yes. Yeah, here's the prequel. It's just a tiny little 50-page thing that I made a couple of these for a book signing to give out as door prizes, so I don't think most people are going to buy that in paperback. You can actually get it free if you join my newsletter, but it's 99 cents on Amazon. But it is the story of it is the boy meets girl story. So it starts actually when they're 13 years old and follows them all the way up to their wedding day. So it actually ends right as the novel is getting ready to begin. So you can see just little snippets here and there over that 15-year span or so of just kind of how their love story builds.
Awesome. So I like that. So they can buy the prequel if they want to, or the really smart thing is to just join your newsletter, because then they get it for free. And they can keep up with what else you have in the works, because you're also working on another book right now, correct?
Yes. Yep. I'm working on another romantic suspense, which is not related to this one, another standalone, but it is going to be probably out next year sometime. All depends on how fast I can work. But it's going to be about an ex-Army Ranger. It's tentatively titled Captive Hearts. Basically, he's the oldest of 5 brothers, and the youngest one witnesses his parents' murder. And it turns out that the man who did it finds out that there was a witness, but he doesn't know which of them it is, so just decides to clean up all loose ends. He has to pretty much annihilate their whole family. But he doesn't really know who he's up against. So they just kind of disappear and go off the grid for a while. And then a reporter captures him in the background of a story that she's doing. And so the big bad in this scenario contacts her and gives her a story about who he is, and says, I'm his grandfather, and I'm wanting to get in touch because I want to mend fences with him and whatever, but I haven't been able to find him, and so can you help me find him? And so when she arrives and they hit it off immediately, but when he figures out that she's been in contact with this guy, he knows that they're not safe and they have to run again, but also she's not safe because he knows who she is, and he now knows the real truth. And so he leaves and takes her with them. So it's kind of like a accidental hostage taking. And so he's like, I like this girl and I want to keep her safe, but also I'm really sorry about the fact that I have to kidnap you. And so then it's just like, I'm trying to win your heart, but also your trust, and get you not to divulge my whereabouts. And so hopefully it's going to be good, but I'm really falling in love. I mean, I like those characters. I haven't even gotten them to meet on the page yet, but I'm loving the interplay of the brothers. They're just a really fun group. So hopefully people are going to like it too. So.
Oh, I imagine they will. So you must be a plotter then, because it sounds like you have the story plotted, at least in your head.
I plot the big details. Like I know the big points of things that are going to happen, but there are definitely a lot of surprises along the way, especially with Out of Darkness and the love triangle, which is the thing that people either love or hate about it. I think I never meant to do that. I really thought that the best friend character was just going to be a great support, and he would probably fall for Elizabeth, but at the end of that, like when Drew showed back up, he'd be gone. Like he would exit stage left, and that would be the last we hear of him. But he just kept whispering in my ear and being like, hey, there's actually a lot going on with me, and I would love if you would tell my story. And so he just became a really integral part of the book and took me by surprise for sure. So I like to leave room for surprises for me, which I hope also will surprise readers as well.
I love it when that happens. It sort of took me by surprise with my first time it happened in my book too, because when I first started writing, I wasn't really much of a plotter. I kind of was like you. I had this big idea of what was going to happen, but I just kind of wrote. And I didn't have anything weird happen until my third book, when I was breaking this couple up and he just kept coming back in. And I didn't even realize I'd written a page with him back in the story. And then I was like, no, this doesn't work. Like, you're not fitting with my big picture plan.
Yeah.
So in the original book, I cut him out. I was like, you have to go. And then when I went back and revised it, I was like, okay, he really needed to come back in. I'm just going to make it work so that he's back in the story. So sometimes I think you have to be true to those characters and that thing that pops up in your head. which my husband does not understand because he's always giving me a hard time. Why are you always writing? And I was like, dude, if you could be in my head right now, like I have 3 more books in my head that I just don't have time to write yet. And I was like, they keep me up at night. Like people talk to me and there's like whole stories. Yeah. So I think that's one of the fun things and one of the really hard things about being a writer. Because I'm like, you don't have a lot of time. So my time is usually at night after the kids are in bed, and I'm like, okay, type as fast as you can, get it out there. We can edit later, because it's a lot going on. So do you have a full-time job as well, or do you get to write mainly full-time?
Yeah, I'm a freelance editor, and so I'm actually working on other people's books most of the time. And so, and I'm a stay-at-home mom, so I do that during nap time, and I do that from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. after my son goes to bed. And so basically I write when I'm between clients. So if I have clients back to back, I just keep working on their stuff, and my stuff has to wait unless I like write out a couple scenes while my son is watching a movie or something here and there. But I really don't get a lot of time for it unless I'm between clients, which is great because I have the time, but always bad because it's like, oh, I'm not getting paid to do this right now. So I've always got that pull of needing to make some money, but also really wanting to write my own stuff. So, but I also love cheerleading for my authors, and getting to, be paid to read is pretty awesome.
That is pretty awesome. Yeah. So I do have a question though about editing, because I've always wondered, like, I have read books that I really, really enjoy, and I'm like, oh, I would have loved to edit this book because, I have an English background, at least grammar wise, I'm pretty set. But then I have read books, and when I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I don't have to edit this book, because I wouldn't even know where to begin to tell them to fix it. What do you do with those? Like, do you take those books, or do you just send them back and be like, this isn't the book for me? Like, how do you get through that process?
I have said no a time or two, but that was usually more about subject matter. If it was something that I just wasn't comfortable working with. But the ones that are just like, this person does not know English apparently, or needs to be taught to write from the basics, or this looks like something that I would have written in the 5th grade. Usually what I do is just am honest about the amount of time that it would take me, and I charge by the hour. And so when I say, okay, sure, this is going to take me 80 hours and cost you $3,000, they're like, oh, you know what? Never mind. And so I don't usually have to say no. I have had 2 people take me up on something like that, and I have regretted it. So with one of them, I just said, why don't you let me do the first 20 pages or so? And after you've seen what it's going to look like, you can decide if you want to continue. But yeah, I would say at this point, I've been doing this long enough that I have my stable of authors, and I just edit their books. And I will take on new clients occasionally. And most of them come as referrals and are great. Every now and then it's kind of feast or famine, where I'm like booked for 3 months and then all of a sudden there's nothing. And so then I'll kind of reach out and take some people that might not be my favorite. And those are harder, especially because if I'm struggling, I might have to offer a discount. And so then I'm working for less money for someone that I'm like, I don't know if I can make this good. Like, I can make it clean. But I can't make your story interesting. I can tell you where you could maybe infuse some things that would make it more interesting. I can tell you how to make your characters a little bit more likable. But in the end, if your story is just not a great story, there's not a ton I can do about that. And so I do struggle sometimes with trying to decide whether I should tell people this is not really for you versus just, cleaning it up as best as I can and sending them out into the world. So sometimes I'll just say, hey, do me a favor and don't list me in your credits.
Please don't give me credit.
I don't list them on my website as people I have worked for. I just say, this is what it is. This is the story that you gave me.
I think people sort of understand that, when you look at it, is because writing is subjective a little bit, and so there are some of those people who, just like singing and acting and things like that, who really feel like they have something, even though some of the rest of us might not get what their vision is.
Yes, yeah.
I have a friend who was at my gym for a while, and he wrote about some experiences, and he just is one of those people who, I I call them like vomiters. They're not like, but you know, anything that's in their head just kind of vomits out on the page.
Sure.
And I was just like, I don't even know where this is going. Like there were so many thoughts all over the paper. I was really glad he didn't ask me to edit that book, because I would have been like, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
There's so much going on.
Yes.
But that's good to know. So we'll list you as an editor, and if people are interested and you have openings, because it sounds like you're booked pretty good, which is nice.
Yeah, I think I have some in November at this point. So a couple months out, I'll have some more opportunity. So
very nice. But yeah, that's fantastic that you get to kind of get paid to read and help authors improve their craft. And such an important thing for new writers to have someone else read their book. And if you can afford a good editor, then really an editor is the best person to read your book. But if not, at least get some other people to read it and give you some feedback. And if everybody just writes back and says it's wonderful, go get somebody else, because there's always going to be somebody.
That I often give. In fact, I just had somebody last night who sent me their stuff, and I said, I am absolutely happy to put you on the calendar, but I'm looking at how much time this is going to take, and I'm thinking it's going to be kind of more towards the a lot end. And so if you can find a critique partner or find somebody to go through it with you now, and you want to send it to me a few months from now after you've worked some more, it'll save you a lot in the end.
Yeah.
To send it to me in the best that you can get it, so.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I didn't realize starting out that I have picked up now is like beta readers are super important.
Yes.
And if you can find other writers who will be beta readers for you, like that's super helpful, because you know your mom your mom or your friend who lives down the street may be great, but they're probably not going to give you the constructive criticism that you need to really make the book great. But it's also
as much as we all want to hear it's perfect, I wouldn't change a thing. That's rarely actually true.
Yes, it's so true. Yeah, but then you also have to kind of balance that. Not everyone's going to love your book, and you got to kind of take that. Okay, do I want to make these changes? Do I not want to make these changes? And wrestle with that, because that's kind of hard. I just finished a novella and I sent it out to some beta readers, and 4 out of the 5 came back and they were like, yeah, I really like the story, blah, blah. And then one of them was like, I just didn't feel your characters at all. And she was like, it felt too rushed. And I'm like, well, it is a novella. So, and it has to be a romance. It has to have that whole happy ending. So I don't have a lot to work with. Like it's gonna feel a little rushed. But that's one of the things. So, I mean, I'm going back and looking at it. I'm not just shoving that to the side, but it's one of those things where you kind of have to look at it and be like, okay, well, do I see what they're seeing? Do I not see what they're seeing? And keeping that in mind is, even as you put it out there, that, when bad reviews come in, those are just people who your book wasn't meant for.
Yep.
But it's hard, I think, to take those as a writer especially when you become really close to your craft.
Definitely.
And you invest in it. So what's the easiest part of the writing process for you? I mean, writing and editing, you kind of have both lenses.
Yeah, I love the part where I'm just first getting to know characters. And I am obsessive about casting. I actually have some writer friends who always will ask me, like they'll send me like a brief physical description and maybe a couple of little attributes and be like, help me find the right person for this. And I love doing that. And so with mine, I always start with who my characters are, and I will do like a beat sheet or an interview with them and ask a few questions. And sometimes I like to do it where I'm actually like sitting down and I'll write it out interview style, or sometimes I just kind of fill out a form to just get to know who they are and what makes them tick and figure out exactly what they look like. And I usually choose actors, but occasionally I will choose models or somebody that I'll just see and be like, no, that's definitely this person. But yeah, just the figuring out who these characters are part in the very beginning is always my favorite.
And what do you think is the hardest part of the process?
Oh man. Most recently, the hardest part for me was figuring out formatting. After everything was done, and once I decided to self-publish, I was like, I have to like figure out how to get my page numbers fitted right and all of this sort of thing. But through the process, for me, a lot of times it's just discipline, because I am a stay-at-home mom and I want to be investing in time with my son, and then I'm editing full-time. I don't get a lot of time to write, and when that time comes that I finally have a free window, I just want to watch Netflix. I just want to put my feet up and not look at the computer all day. And so just putting my seat in the chair and getting to work, I think, is sometimes the hardest for me.
I think that, yeah, I think that's a hard thing. And I've heard a lot of people say, just write. Like, even if it's not great, just write,
Yeah.
because it's the whole like repetitive process of getting it out there and getting used to it. But it is
Yeah.
hard when you're, a busy mom and you're doing other stuff. And then when you're at a computer editing all day, the last thing you want to do is open up your computer and write. It's like, oh
Yep.
my gosh. I teach, and so I kind of feel the same way when I'm not at my computer all day long, but I do a lot of grading and stuff. And then when I get home, I'm like, I need to write, but I don't really want to write. Like,
Yeah.
I need to write. And this year, especially, I had a lot of deadlines I set for myself with projects that I signed up for. And so I was like, okay, I have to write. Like, it's not a choice at this point. But that's one nice thing I think about self-publishing is you can kind of choose when you're going to be working on projects. And,
Yes.
for your next one, you gave yourself a large window to work with,
Yeah.
which is good. Yeah. What about the promotion side? I think that's something that people don't think about. Whenever we talk about, oh, we're authors, they're like, oh, you just get to sit and write books, and it's like, no, no, that's usually the easiest part. Like, writing's the fun part. But what have you learned about promoting?
Oh man, that I don't have a natural talent for it. I am, oh my goodness, I just did a really awesome blog tour, and I had 2 or 3 reviewers every day that were posting reviews, and I was to interact with them, but I needed to share those every day. And at like a weekend, it was 2 weeks long, and like a week into it, I was like, all I'm doing is talking about me and my book and being like, hey, everybody, me, remember me? I've got another review up. Go look at this thing again. And so yeah, I get high. I was trying to self-promote. I don't like that. I would much rather promote other people and much rather talk about kids and cute cats. So it's really hard for me. I found that I can do okay designing cute ads and memes to share on Facebook. Um, doing it the free way, I don't know how much it's hard to break past your circle of people that know you. Like on your first debut, everybody that you've ever known is like, a friend of mine wrote a book. What? I'm going to buy it. So in that first week or two, you make a lot of sales. And then if you don't get past your friends and family circle, it's really hard after that. And so, yeah, the blog tour was super helpful in terms of getting eyes that don't know me on my book, and I'm looking into doing some Amazon ads. I've done Facebook ads, and like I think you could make it a full-time job watching and seeing how things like convert into sales or don't convert into sales, or how many people are actually viewing what you're creating. And I don't have time for that. And so like I try things, and if I see a huge jump in my rank or in my sales, and I'm like, oh, note to self, that worked all right. But I don't have time to be constantly watching things, and I don't even have time to be advertising all the time. So I try to do more with like just investing in readers and people and getting to know people. And so hopefully they'll like me and therefore like to pass the word along. But yeah, I think you could spend all day, every day on it. And I just have to kind of choose carefully what I feel like is working.
Right. And I think that's one of the hard parts too, is especially when you have limited time, like I want to be writing, but there has to be some time when I'm out promoting my book. And
Yeah.
I'm in a lot of the Facebook promotion clubs, and I usually forget until I see somebody posting their book, and then I'm like, oh, I should go post my book. And so, I'll do
Yep.
some postings. I don't know that I've seen any sales from that, so I have no idea if it actually works.
Great.
But
Yeah.
one thing that I did find is I met another author who told me to hashtag on my Facebook posts. And I was like, but Facebook doesn't use hashtags. And she was like, I know, but for some reason it like translates. And it doesn't work every time. So I don't know what the secret behind it is. But I just posted a picture of the Christmas anthology that I'm writing with a couple of authors and put some hashtags on it. And it's reached almost 10,000 people. And
Oh,
I'm
wow.
like, okay. So, and that was just off of my author Facebook page.
Yeah.
And so there is a system behind it. Do I know the secret? No. But now whenever I post on my Facebook page, I always throw some hashtags in, and I hope people don't think it's too odd, but I'm like, if it's going to reach some people, then that's the whole goal.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's sort of those random things that you learn. And Amazon ads, I tried those as well, and I found that they worked really good for my kids' books, but not so great for my inspirational adult books.
Hmm.
So I was like, that's kind of strange. I'm not sure why the difference, but it got my book in front of a lot of people that I, like you, wouldn't have met.
Yeah.
So that was kind of nice. And then I think newsletters are really important. Do you obviously have a newsletter. Do you have your book up on one of the book funnels or Insta freebies?
I have it on Insta Freebie. I paid at the very beginning to have people have to sign up for my newsletter to get it, but that was an expense that I couldn't keep doing. And so I didn't see a lot of, I think maybe 30 people signed up, but several of them didn't unsubscribe as soon as I started sending them stuff. So that's good. But I think what helped the most was running contests for giveaways and having one of the things be sign up for the newsletter, and then having First Light available for free when you sign up for the newsletter, I think helps as well. So it's slowly building, and I do some cross-promotional stuff with some other authors in my genre, and that seems to help as well. I'll get a few subscribers each time we do that. So yeah, it's slowly building, but it's organic at this point. Like, I feel like the people that are on there are actually interested, and
Right.
so that's good. But it's not a huge list. So I would definitely like to continue doing things that will help build that. So
Yeah, it's a hard thing. I switched over to BookFunnel because it was a little bit cheaper. I started with Insta Freebie, but then I was like, cool. And BookFunnel was a little bit cheaper. But yeah, it's hard getting the people there. And then unfortunately, I've had a few people who are like, as soon as you send something, they unsubscribe. And one person actually responded and said, I only read free books. And I was like, it's not even free for me to put a free book on this download thing. Like, I wish they would understand that there's costs behind everything.
yeah.
And so it's sort of a trade-off, but it is nice when you get those people who stick around and they clearly want your work and they're interested in what you're doing. And it's really awesome to find. I love when those people respond and they're like, oh, I really related to this part of your book, or, I really enjoyed this aspect. That's the payoff, I think, in the end.
Definitely.
So how long have you been writing?
I guess I started like playing around with writing in college. I had been doing all the academic papers and everything, and so senior year I took a creative writing course and was like, oh, that's right, I really love to do this. And a few friends of mine were also writing fan fiction, and so there are a couple of little fandoms that I thought it would be fun to write fan fiction about, and so we spent some time doing that, and it was really fun, but then it started to be like, it took a lot of time,
Right.
and so the two things happened at once. One, I was like, I'm spending a lot of time doing this, and I want it to be something that matters, and so I want to write something that has real use in life, and so I wanted to write fiction that honors God, and so I pulled back on the fan fiction a little bit, and at the same time, one of my fan fiction friends decided that she was going to start really pursuing publication, and she started a writers group and invited me to join, and she has since sold, so much. She's written like 30 books in this amount of time.
Wow.
She'll do little serials, but she writes in several genres. She has a pen name. She's just like, she's on fire, and is making tens of thousands of dollars a month. And she's written some books on how to indie publish successfully, which that has actually really helped me with with my editing business, because she listed me as a preferred editor. And so that kind of helped that take off. But it didn't help my writing, because I'm just always pulled in two directions, with loving building my editing business and meeting clients, and again, being paid to read, which is flipping awesome. But I want to be working on my stuff. And so until my son came along, I was pursuing publication hardcore, and I had joined several organizations and went to conferences, and I landed my dream agent and thought, like, this is it. I signed with Rochelle Gardner, and I am going to publish all the books, and this is going to be amazing, and I'm going to be super famous. And that did not happen. And so we shopped my book around, and everybody said that they really liked my voice and my characters. They may or may not have been in love with my story, or it just wasn't a good time, or they had something similar. And so very nice rejections from all of the houses that I was interested in working with. And so then I chose not to pursue going with a smaller pub house. And so then I was just kind of left sitting on it. And she said, well, write something else. And I was like, with what time? And then I had my son, and I had even less time. And then I started editing more like as income at that point, so that I could stay home with my son. And so so yeah, at that point, I kind of put all of my writing aside. So I guess I pursued it for about 3 years, really, and then started editing. And so from the time that I started writing Out of Darkness to publication was actually about 6 years. But it was finished long before that. And then I just did some heavier editing on it. But I also probably started 3 or 4 other books during that time that are in various states of either full outline, or I have, 50 pages or so written. And so, yeah, I have probably, I think the last I counted, somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 ideas that I would love to get to someday, but they're not all in one genre. And, I'd like to build myself right now in the romantic suspense vein and kind of see what happens from here. But so yeah, I would say around 6 years was when I really first started writing seriously.
And what would you say to like somebody who is just starting out? Like, what's some advice maybe that you wish you had known first getting started that you would pass on to somebody?
For me, I think the thing that really helped was going to the conferences. My first one, like I always say, go as a learner. Don't go like trying to pitch because you're not going to be ready and you're going to embarrass yourself. And so like, if you can afford one, go learn about craft, meet people, and not just like editors and agents, but other writers, because I have so many friends that I met at conferences that have been able to help me along the way because they, got a break before me, or they knew somebody. That's definitely, it was through friends that I was able to meet up with Rochelle. And so, yeah, just go and learn and be better at your craft and keep writing, and make connections with people. And that really, I think those were the things that helped the most was just networking and getting to know people and continuing to learn all the while.
And I think that's one thing that I have found I really like about the indie publishing world is, for the most part, the writers out there are really willing to help people coming up.
Yes.
Like, nobody's really like, oh, that's my niche, don't write in my niche. I don't
Right.
want competition. Like, everybody's really willing to be like, hey, here's what I've learned. Here's what worked for me. Here's what didn't work for me, but maybe it'll work for you. But everybody seems really open and honest and willing to really kind of help. And a lot of people will become your beta readers or your ARC readers or whatever because they want to help you get started. And so that's really cool. And I didn't really expect that, because in a lot of similar type competitions, it's pretty cutthroat and people are like, oh, I want my own little like niche of the market. But even when we write the same genre, we don't write the same. And so there's always that. And I think that's what writers understand is like, yeah, we may write the same type of book, but I write very differently than you write. And some people are going to love both of us. Some people are going to love you. Some people are going to love me. That's just the way that the world works.
Yeah. And it's great too to be able to do some of that cross-promotional stuff. If you have a lot of people that are following you and you say, hey, if you like my stuff, you might like so-and-so stuff. And so that's been super helpful to have friends that are a little bit further along that can help in that way, and send people my direction. And I look forward to being able to, like right now I do cross promotion with my newsletter and I'm like, hey, my 98 followers are going to be really excited to hear about your book. But hopefully one day that number is going to, it has, even in the last month, it has doubled at least. And so that's great. slow but sure steps. But yeah, I have found the same thing, that people have been really, really helpful and encouraging. And so that's been great.
Yeah. So I have one more question for you. I recently got started writing in a Kindle world. Have you ever heard of Kindle worlds, and have you ever looked into writing into them?
No. It's like actual books that are similar to, like, it's kind of like fan fiction thing, but you're actually publishing books. Yeah.
It's kind of like fan fiction. It's based around one author's starter books, basically. And so I'm writing in Melissa Storm's First Street Christian Church series. She has the first contemporary Christian Kindle world. That's really a mouthful to say. And I thought of you because, you wanted to write books that honor God. And I don't know that we have a lot of romantic suspense, but it would be super fun to put it in there. But it was really an interesting process to me, because we can use Melissa's characters and Melissa's town, but we can't use the characters that other people put in. And so like 20 people are writing in this, they call it the sandbox. 20 people are writing in this sandbox, and they're all adding new characters and new places. And then we come in and we're writing in the sandbox, but we're not allowed to use the new characters and new places, but only the original. it gets kind of tricky.
Yeah.
And so it was a bit of a challenge. I was like, oh, I could totally do this. This will be great. Hammer out a novella because 25,000 words. And then I got started and I was like, oh wait, I don't know how to do this because I can't write about this place that I really needed this character. Yeah. And then Melissa and I write very differently, and I'm much more descriptive. And so I was like, I need to know how to describe this character, and I can't find a description anywhere. And I can't introduce that character if I can't tell what they look like. That drives me crazy. Yeah. It was a fun challenge. Maybe not something you want to do when you're short on time, but like it really kind of made me pause and think about writing, because I had to adhere to rules that I'm not used to adhering to. Yeah. Which was kind of interesting.
There are definitely some worlds that I would be interested in writing, and some books that I have read that have just really been like, ooh, I want to explore this. And I think for me, that's often how some of my story ideas have come into my brain, is that I've read something else and been like, but what if things happen differently? I was just mentioning that, like, my idea for Out of Darkness came a little bit from Deb Rainey, which is a completely different genre. It was women's fiction, so no suspense, none of anything, but it was that same sort of what if your husband died and then showed back up when you were already in her situation, she was already remarried, and so then she's actually married to two people, and so yeah, that one was rough. That book was hard on my heart, and not that mine is not hard on your heart, but in my situation, she's not married to the new guy, so there's a clear correct choice. There's a thing that she should do, but one of the themes kind of is like knowing that something is the right thing doesn't necessarily make it easier, right. And so so you see a lot of the turmoil, but there's not like a question of what she's going to actually do. But yeah, for me, I just wanted to kind of explore what would happen if things were completely different, and you had spent 3 years building a life with somebody else, and then you had to say, okay, like, you're not my husband, and this is my husband, and he's changed. He's, got PTSD. He's been in captivity for 3 years, and things have not been looking good. But I've made a commitment. And so I wanted to, see how things would look in that vein. And there have been other stories, like I'll watch something on TV or see something, a movie, and think, maybe I think they missed an opportunity, or I hate the way that they handled something, or I'll read a synopsis and read the book and be like, this is not what I expected it to be at all. And so yeah, I get my ideas from things like that all the time. So I can imagine that it would be a lot of fun to write in somebody else's world sometimes too.
Yeah, it was definitely a challenge, though. And I'm kind of like you. I get a lot of inspiration from, watching and reading things, and then just random people, like things people will say that I'll be like, oh my gosh, I could totally make a book about that, and then like, it's very strange. Like even today at church, somebody said something and I was like, I wonder if I could make a book about that. I think maybe I could. So yeah, so you kind of have those just random moments of inspiration that I think writers see that a lot of people don't necessarily know are always going on behind our brains. Yeah. There always seem to be working back there.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Well, I want to say thank you so much for joining us, Erynn. Yes, and I will have links above in the article above for all of you so that you can find out where to get your free novella from Erynn and sign up for her newsletter, because you're going to want to keep in touch with her. And then maybe...
And I won't spam you.
That's right. She won't spam you. And if you're looking for editing, you can always check with her and see when she has openings, because it sounds like she's fantastic, but well booked. So you may have to wait in line a little bit. But yeah, we'll keep in touch and see what wonderful things are coming down the pipe for you, because it sounds like you've got some great ideas coming.
Great. Thanks.
All right. And for all of you out there at TLBTV land, we'll see you next time right here on Write the World.